When mountains rose and waters roared before the kingdoms of men carved their names upon the earth. Before the rivers had learned their paths and the mountains had chosen their thrones, the land that would one day be called Van Lang was a place where God still walked among mortals, and the breath of nature itself shaped the destiny of kings. In those ancient days, the sky glowed brighter, the forests whispered louder, and the mountains were young and restless. The HNG kings ruled the realm, guardians chosen by heaven to bring order to a land of storms, spirits, and wonders. Yet even their divine mandate trembled before the elemental forces that stirred beneath the world. For in the heart of the mountains, a being of stone, wind, and unshakable strength opened his eyes to the horizon. He was Sơn Tinh, Lord of the Peaks, the master of earth and forest. With a gesture, he could summon cliffs from the soil. With a breath, he could bend the mist to his will. The beasts of the highlands followed him, and the stones themselves sang his name. But far beneath the rivers, deep in the drowned chambers of the underworld currents, another presence awakened, a presence of relentless tides and roaring tempests. He was Thuy Tinh, Lord of the waters, master of storms and seas. His voice could summon waves that devoured coastlines, and his fury could tear open the heavens with floods. To spirits one of earth, one of water, born from the same ancient world, destined to collide. And at the center of this inevitable clash stood Mu Nang, daughter of the HNG king, a princess whose beauty, grace, and purity were said to equal the dawn's first light. Yet, her heart was not merely the prize of a royal lineage, would become the spark that ignited one of the greatest battles the land had ever known. A battle not merely of pride, not merely of desire, but of elements, of dominion, of destiny. This is the tale of when mountains rose to defy the sea, when storms raged to swallow the earth, and when the heavens bore witness to a rivalry so powerful that its echoes would shape the fate of Vietnam for generations. This is the epic of Sơn Tinh and Thủy Tinh. Chapter 1. The Year of the Trials and the Princess of Dawn. In the ancient age, when the mountains still breathed and the rivers still carried the voices of forgotten gods, the land of Van Lang stood at the threshold of a destiny shaped by storm and stone. It was the year of the trials, a fated turning of the heavens when celestial forces stirred restlessly and the world below felt the shifting balance of power. The people sensed it in the tremor of the earth, in the uneasy whispers of bamboo forests, and in the rising mist that clung to the Red River like a warning shroud. At the heart of this changing era stood King HNG the 18th, who ruled from Phong Shou with wisdom and the unshakable will of the ancestors. As dusk painted the capital with molten gold, he gazed from his palace balcony toward the horizon, where mountains stood like titans. The elders had foretold that this year would bring trials unlike any before. Rains grew heavier, tides rose higher. The river god's temper grew unpredictable. The mountains rumbled as if awakening from a long, uneasy sleep. Yet, amid this rising tension, a light was preparing to enter the world, one that would defy storms and reshape the fate of Van Lang. Princess Mu Nang Lei, daughter of King HNG, was known throughout the kingdom as the Princess of Dawn. Born during the first sunrise after a year of drought, she carried an aura that seemed touched by divine blessing. Her footsteps left warmth upon cold stone. Her presence calmed restless winds. Even the birds, in their morning flights, often circled above her chamber as though greeting one of their own. The The people believed she embodied the promise of renewal, a living symbol of harmony between heaven and earth. But destiny, as always, waited with its shadow. As the year of the trials deepened, two forces stirred beyond the borders of human sight. In the north, among towering peaks wrapped in eternal mist, lived Sơn Tinh, the mountain lord of Thuy Vietnamese. His name was spoken with reverence by highland tribes who offered him fruits and incense at stone altars. He commanded the strength of mountains, the wisdom of ancient forests, and the loyalty of creatures dwelling upon cliffs and hidden caves. He walked with the calm certainty of those who shaped the earth with their will. The wind bowed to him, the stone listened to him, the mountains moved for him. In the east, deep beneath the riverbeds, where sunlight could not reach, dwelled Thủy Tinh, the lord of the waters. His palace of coral and pearl shimmered with the pulse of the tides. The rivers were his blood, the storms his voice, the sea his boundless kingdom. He was a god of changing moods, serene as morning dew, furious as crashing monsoon waves. When he rose from the depths, the world itself trembled. Both lords had watched Mu Nong from afar, sensing within her a radiance that resonated with their domains. To Sơn Tinh, she was like the first light that touched mountain peaks pure and steady. To Thủy Tinh, she glowed like moonlight reflected on river waves, gentle yet infinitely deep. But admiration soon grew into longing, and longing grew into destiny. One night, as thunder trembled across the sky, King Hng gathered his council. Reports flowed in, drought in the north, storms in the east, rivers rising without cause, mountains shedding boulders as though warning of impending conflict. The court murmured fearfully, priests offered incense, and astrologers consulted star maps. When dawn arrived, a new omen appeared. A white heron circled the palace 3 times before landing before King Hng. In its beak was a single lotus petal glowing with unnatural brilliance. The priests gasped this was a sign of divine visitation, but what it meant was unclear. That evening, King Hng summoned Mu Nang. She approached with the calm grace that defined her, her silk robes shimmering like the colors of early sunrise. The king studied her quietly. "My child," he said, "the world shifts. Forces greater than kingdoms move around us. I fear the trials of this year may reach you as well." Mu Nang bowed her head. "Father, whatever fate awaits, I will face it with your guidance." But fate, as it often does, arrived faster than expected. At sunrise the next morning, a booming sound echoed from the mountains, steady, rhythmic, powerful. In the distance, a figure approached, riding atop a creature shaped from rock and crowned with crystalline stone. It was Sơn Tinh, appearing in full majesty as mist spiraled around his form. The court gasped. The mountain lord had come in person. Before anyone could recover, the river beside the palace erupted in a column of rising water. From the spiraling torrent emerged Thủy Tinh, standing atop a dragon of shimmering scales, water swirling like living armor around him. Both gods stepped forward simultaneously, their eyes fixed upon Mu Nang, and so, upon a day painted with golden dawn and stormlit sky, the fated conflict began. Mountains and waters stood across from each other, not yet enemies, but rivals in desire for. Both sought the Princess of Dawn. King Hng, shaken but composed, approached the two lords. "If you seek my daughter, then the trials of this year will be joined by one more, a test of worth. Return tomorrow." He who proves his devotion through deeds, not words, shall earn her hand. The mountain lord bowed respectfully. The water lord bowed with simmering pride. Both turned away, the tension between them heavier than the humid air before a storm. As the sun set behind the mountains and the rivers darkened into dusk, Munang stood alone on her balcony, the wind whispering through her hair. She did not yet know that her choice, or rather, the gods' battle for her, would unleash the greatest clash the land had ever seen. A clash that would shake mountains, a clash that would drown valleys, a clash that would define the eternal struggle between stone and storm, peak and tide, Sơn Tinh and Thủy Tinh. And thus began the epic. Chapter 2. The contest of the gifts and the gathering storm. The royal drums thundered across the valley, echoing over the Red River like the heartbeat of the kingdom. From every corner of Von Lang, envoys, nobles, warriors, and curious villagers gathered at the steps of the Sky Pillar Palace, drawn by a proclamation that would be remembered for generations. The king would choose the husband of Princess Munang based on a contest of divine gifts. The air shimmered with anticipation as dawn stretched its first pale threads over the mountains. The princess of dawn, her presence still lingering in the thoughts of all who had glimpsed her sat beside her father. The hngking.com as a lotus resting on still water. Yet even she could not hide the quiet storm rising beneath her serene exterior. For her heart had recognized something in Sơn Tinh, gravity, a warmth, a timelessness that felt like the gentle breath of the earth itself. But fate had not sent only one suitor. The palace gates opened with a roar of wind. Clouds darkened as if bowing in reverence. And from the river's edge, riding in a surge of swirling mist, arrived Thủy Tinh, Lord of the waters. His form glimmered like moonlit waves, his eyes deep and restless as the storm tide. Wherever he stepped, the stone floor gleamed wet, as though touched by the ghost of the sea. Across the courtyard, Sơn Tinh stood firm, unwavering, his presence radiating the strength of mountains and forests. The winds softened as if embracing him, carrying with them whispers of rustling leaves and the scent of pine. Even the torches leaned toward him, drawn by the quiet gravity of his power. To spirits, to forces of nature, to destiny's crossing on the threshold of the mortal world, the king rose. Both of you possess greatness beyond men, he declared. But my daughter can be given only to one. The suitor who returns first at sunrise with these gifts shall win her hand. A herald unrolled a long silk scroll, 100 plates of elephant tusk feast, 100 plates of 9-spur cock dishes, and a pair of mythic creatures of the mountains, the golden-furred elephant and the red-crested phoenix. Gasps rippled through the crowd. These were treasures born not from kingdoms, but from legends. Sơn Tinh nodded once, a soft rumble of thunder answering from the distant peaks. Thủy Tinh gaze tightened, a dark wave rising somewhere far beyond the horizon. The king lowered the scroll. At sunrise, the one who brings these gifts first shall be my daughter's husband. The contest was set. The air split, and at once the suitors vanished. Sơn Tinh rose into the sky in a burst of wind and sunlight. Sweeping through the valleys, he commanded. Ancient mountains bowed as he passed, offering him their secrets. The phoenixes of the high cliffs cried out in recognition, their songs echoing his purpose. Herds of mountain elephants stirred beneath his call, their tusks gleaming like polished ivory. Nature moved with him. Thủy Tinh, meanwhile, sank into the churning depths of the river. sea serpents coiled beneath him, obeying his fury. Storm clouds gathered above as he summoned the restless tides. Schools of silver fish spun around his arms like living armor, and currents tore through the deep to search for aquatic treasures that could match the king's demands. But the gifts required were not of the sea, and a storm, no matter how powerful, cannot command the creatures of the earth. Deep in the night, before the stars could blink awake, Sơn Tinh returned. With a single bow before the king, he placed the legendary creatures and the 100 treasures at the palace gates. He had won. The princess stepped forward, her eyes meeting his like dawn meeting the mountain peaks. The marriage was sealed before sunrise, but far below, beneath the river's surface, Thuy Tinh felt the moment the bond was formed, a pull in the currents, a tearing in the tide. Rage rippled outward in violent spirals. Storms gathered like a dark crown over his head. Rivers swelled, clouds churned, and lightning cracked open the sky. The Lord of the Waters did not accept defeat, and as he rose, the land trembled, for the gathering storm had begun. Chapter 3: The First Great Flood and the Mountain Lord's Stand. The morning after the royal court announced the results of the marriage contest, an eerie stillness blanketed the land. The air itself felt tight, as though holding its breath in anticipation of something colossal and terrible. Farmers felt it, first animals restless, clouds thickening unusually fast, the scent of rain turning sharp and metallic. Rumors spread like sparks on dry grass. Thuy Tinh had vanished from the capital without a word, his eyes burning with humiliation and the promise of vengeance. By noon, the horizon darkened into a wall of storm. Winds twisted violently, gathering water from the distant sea, like a monstrous hand curling into a fist. The palace guards felt the ground tremble as the sky cracked open with a roar that sounded almost alive, a roar of fury, of pride wounded beyond measure. Then, from the east, the waters rose, not as rain, not as river swell, but as a rampaging tide, climbing, surging, devouring the lowlands in a single sweep. Villages vanished beneath churning waves, trees snapped like reeds. The sound of the flood was not the sound of nature, was the sound of a god unleashed. At the heart of the storm, towering above the rolling fury, stood Thuy Tinh, Lord of the Waters, his body luminous with the pale glow of ocean foam. His voice boomed across the drowned lands, carrying the wrath of a rejected king. If I cannot claim Munang by right, then let the world drown in my sorrow. He raised both arms, and the waters obeyed, instantly spiraling upward, forming colossal serpents of liquid power that lashed across the plains. But the mountain did not bow. From the western highlands came a quake of power, steady and grounded, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Trees bent toward the sky, stones glowed faintly, and a surge of wind swept away the fog. Riding this wind, his figure radiant with golden aura, descended Sơn Tinh, Mountain Lord, master of peaks, storms, and ancient spirits of the land. Where Thuy Tinh fury was chaos, Sơn Tinh presence was order, still, powerful, unwavering. He raised his hand, the mountains answered. Earth heaved upward, pushing hilltops higher, summoning ridges where none existed before. Villages found themselves lifted above the reach of the monstrous flood. Forest roots intertwined to form natural barriers. Boulders rolled into position like soldiers locking shields. And still the water rose, and still the mountains grew. The clash of gods began. Lightning ripped across the sky, as Thủy Tinh sent another wave taller than any temple, faster than any wind straight toward the capital. Sơn Tinh slammed his staff into the ground, and a mountain ridge burst forth, splitting the wave into two roaring halves. The impact shook the world. For hours the battle raged, water against earth, storm against stone. Every time Thủy Tinh lifted the floodwaters, Sơn Tinh elevated the land. Every time the storm god hurled walls of water, the mountain lord countered with torrents of boulders, tornadoes of dust, and ridges that rose like titans. Below, the people watched in awe and terratini shadows in a war far beyond mortal scale. They clung to higher ground, praying that Sơn Tinh strength would hold. At sunset, the sky bled crimson through the storm clouds. Exhausted, Thủy Tinh unleashed a final, desperate surge, an immense tidal wave shaped like a dragon, its mouth wide with fury. Sơn Tinh, eyes steady, raised his arms and called upon the oldest spirits beneath the mountains, awakening ancient roots and veins of rock that pulsed with golden fire. The collision of divine forces cracked the heavens. The dragon of water shattered. The mountain light dimmed but did not fall. Defeated for the day, Thủy Tinh withdrew into the depths, his storm collapsing behind him, but his rage was not gone. His wrath simmered beneath the waters, waiting for the next chance to strike. As dawn finally broke, Sơn Tinh stood over a battered but standing land. Villagers knelt, praising the mountain lord who had defended their homes, their kingdom, and their princess. But Sơn Tinh looked toward the eastern sea, his expression solemn. He knew the truth. This was only the beginning. And as long as Thủy Tinh heart burned with envy, the floods would return year after year, storm after storm. The eternal war between mountain and water had begun. Chapter 4: The Years of Rising Waters and the Unbreakable Kingdom. For a time, the land of Von Lang knew a fragile peace. The storms that had once clawed at the mountains retreated into the distant horizon, and the rivers, swollen and restless, seemed to remember their courses again. But though the rains ceased, the fear of Thủy Tinh wrath remained like a shadow stretched across the earth. The people rebuilt their homes, but they did so with one eye always lifted toward the sky, listening for the low growl of thunder that might signal another assault. Sơn Tinh, the mountain lord, did not allow the kingdom to rest in ignorance. He knew what others dared not speak aloud. Thủy Tinh defeat had wounded his pride, not extinguished it. The Lord of Waters was patient, as rivers are patientlessly carving stone, wearing down even the hardest will. And so, even as Munang walked the palace gardens again, her steps light, her smile returning, Sơn Tinh prepared for what he understood was inevitable. Across the highlands, he summoned artisans, elders, and warriors. New terraces were carved along the slope steps of stone and earth that reached toward the sky. Villages were rebuilt upon higher ground, protected by natural ridges and reinforced walls. Great reservoirs were dug wide and deep, ready to swallow the excess when the rivers rose. And in the forests, where the ancient trees bent like guardians, Sơn Tinh spoke to the spirits that dwelled between their roots. "We must stand as one," he told them, "for the waters will return not as a test, but as a war." And the spirits, who had watched the land from millennia, bowed to him. For Sơn Tinh was not merely a lord of mountains, he was the heartbeat of the highlands, the unshifting core against which storms shattered. Meanwhile, in the lowlands, farmers and fishermen built new dikes and channels that glimmered like silver veins across the fields. They trained themselves to recognize the smallest change in the river's breath, the faintest tremor beneath the soil. The kingdom wove vigilance into its everyday life, turning fear into discipline and discipline into unity. But the peace could not last. One night, under a moon as pale as bleached bone, the tides began to rise without warning. Fishermen sleeping on the riverbanks awoke to the sensation of water creeping over their feet. The birds fled inland, their cries sharp with panic. And from the eastern sea, a sound rose, a deep rumble like the turning of an ocean's heart. Thủy Tinh had returned, yet this time he did not strike with sudden fury. Instead, he unleashed a slow, deliberate rise of tides, siege of water, meant not to break the mountains in a single blow, but to drown the morale of the kingdom drop by drop. Rivers overflowed their beds, herb fields disappeared beneath swirling currents, and villages were forced to abandon their ancestral homes. Sơn Tinh watched from the high cliffs, his brows furrowed. He changes his tactics, he murmured. This will not be a single great flood, but a war of exhaustion. Munang stood beside him, her eyes filled with worry. Can the kingdom endure? Yes, Sơn Tinh replied, but not by strength alone. And so he descended once more, as he had done during the first great battle. Standing upon the terraces that overlooked the valley, he raised his arms, calling upon the mountains. The earth answered, heaving and shifting, lifting villages higher and creating new ridges to redirect the waters. Hills rose like sleeping giants, awakening, their backs forming barriers against the relentless tides. But Thủy Tinh would not be outdone. With each new barrier erected, he churned the waters more fiercely. Waves turned violent, smashing against the newly formed ridges. Rain began to fall in sheets, turning the world into a blur of silver and roaring noise. Lightning curled across the sky like serpents of white flame. Still, the kingdom did not yield. The people of Von Lang, strengthened by the memory of their first victory, stood their ground. They worked in unison, repairing dikes, reinforcing walls, guiding herds and families to safety. And always, Sơn Tinh was there, appearing where he was needed most, stabilizing a collapsing slope with a touch of his hand, calming frightened villagers with a single steady look. The years passed. Floods came and receded, each one leaving its wound and each wound healing with resilience. Children grew up learning to read the sky, to respect the rivers, to shape their lives according to the rhythms of nature. The kingdom adapted, evolved, and strengthened. What had once been a crisis became a culture of endurance. Still, the two lords mountain and water remained locked in their eternal struggle. Every year, when the monsoon winds began their restless whispers, the people prepared their homes, knowing that Thủy Tinh anger had no end. Every year, the waters rose, and every year Sơn Tinh stood firm, pushing them back. And Munang, though she bore the sorrow of being the cause of this endless strife, walked among her people with grace and quiet courage. She taught them calm amidst chaos, empathy amidst hardship. She became a symbol not of conflict, but of perseverance, reminder that some battles are fought not to win, but to endure. The kingdom, once fragile, had become unbreakable not because the storms grew weaker, but because the people grew stronger. And as the final storm of that long decade faded into a soft drizzle, Sơn Tinh stood atop his highest peak, and looked toward the distant sea where a faint glimmer of blue light flickered beneath the waves. Thủy Tinh was not defeated. He was simply waiting, and Sơn Tinh, unshaken, whispered to the wind, "Then let him come." Chapter 5: The War of the Endless Rains and the Mountain that would not fall. The monsoon season arrived earlier than any elder could remember. Clouds hung low like bruised giants crawling across the sky, their bellies swollen with storms that had forgotten how to end. Fishermen on the Red River whispered that they had seen silhouettes beneath the water, vast shapes gliding slowly, patiently, as if surveying the land before striking. And the winds, usually warm by late summer, now carried a sharp sting of river salt and warning. Sơn Tinh stood atop the highest ridge of Thuy Tinh robes, snapping in the cold wind, eyes fixed on the horizon. He sensed it before any messenger could confirm it. Thủy Tinh was coming again, and this time the river god would not be content with flooding the villages below. The vengeance had grown sharp and old, a blade left too long in the fire. Down in the valley, Princess Munang stared at the dark sky with quiet dread. She had grown used to the cycle floods, storms, retreat, peace, but something in the air felt different this year. As the daughter of King Hng, she had always been taught to remain calm for the sake of the people. Yet even she felt the tremor of fear ripple beneath her heartbeat. It was not simply the return of Thủy Tinh. It was the change in him, a shift as deep as the ocean floor. The first drop of rain struck like a drumbeat, loud, heavy, cold. Then came another and another. Within minutes, the heavens cracked open, unleashing a torrent so fierce it felt as though the sky itself had shattered. Villagers rushed to higher ground as rivers swelled and leaped their banks. Trees twisted under the force of the wind. Fields vanished beneath rising tides. And then the waters moved with purpose. A colossal wave, higher than the tallest house, surged forward as if pulled by an unseen hand. It struck the foot of Thuy Tinh with a roar that shook the roots of the mountain. From within the churning water rose the towering figure of Thủy Tinh, his armor gleaming like wet obsidian, his eyes burning with cold fury. Sơn Tinh. His voice thundered across valleys, echoing through stone and soil. "This year your mountain falls." Sơn Tinh descended halfway down the slope, meeting the storm face to face. Lightning illuminated the clash of their gazes, one like burning fire beneath stone, the other like a whirlwind trapped in ice. "You will flood the world before you drown my people," Sơn Tinh answered, "and even then I will rise higher." Thủy Tinh raised his trident, and the waters obeyed like soldiers under command. Rivers twisted upward, forming spiraling serpents of water that struck the mountain again and again. Boulders shattered. Entire plateaus crumbled into the sea below. But Sơn Tinh lifted his arms, and from the depths of the earth came towering ridges, new terraces, new heights. Mountains rose as quickly as waters surged. A duel carved into the very land, one god raising the world, the other sinking it. For days, the war continued without pause. Rain fell in sheets, so thick the world seemed trapped behind a shimmering curtain. Storm clouds turned day into night. Thunder rolled like ancient beasts waking from slumber. The people huddled on the ever-rising slopes of Thuy Tinh, watching with awe and terror as the gods reshaped the land before their eyes. Princess Munang traveled among the refugees, comforting children, directing workers to reinforce shelters. She never complained, never faltered, She carried the spirit of the dawn gentle, yet unstoppably, and her calm steadied even the bravest warriors. But one night, when she believed no one could hear, she whispered into the rain, "Please, let this storm end." As if hearing her plea, Sơn Tinh fought harder. He summoned winds sharper than blades to scatter the waters. He forged barriers of stone, commanding mountains like living giants. He struck the river gods' tidal beasts with bolts of pure earth energy, splitting waves and turning storms aside. Still, Thuy Tinh returned, again and again, relentless, unbroken, fueled by heartbreak and ancient fury. "Why do you persist?" Sơn Tinh shouted over the roar of a storm, so violent the clouds glowed red. "Why drown a world that has done you no harm?" Thuy Tinh's answer came like a growl of thunder, "Because my sorrow is deeper than the sea." With a sweep of his trident, he unleashed the greatest surge yet in ocean, rising as if the moon had fallen into the earth. It slammed into Thuy Tinh with such force that the mountain bowed, groaned, and nearly broke, but it did not fall. Sơn Tinh stood firm, his feet rooted in the heart of the land. Every ridge, every cliff, every peak hummed with his power. Thuy Tinh was more than a mountain, it was the living spirit of the people, and that spirit would not break. As dawn finally pierced the storm clouds, the waters began to retreat, exhausted at last. Thuy Tinh, surrounded by dissipating waves, snarled in fury and disappeared beneath the surface, vanishing into the dark depths he called home. The people of Van Lang emerged slowly from their shelters. The air was heavy with mist, the ground wet and scarred, but the mountain still stood, and with it, hope. Sơn Tinh watched the sunrise painting gold across the battered land. He knew Thuy Tinh would return, perhaps stronger than ever. But he also knew this truth: as long as the mountains stood, so would his people, and he would raise them higher every time. Chapter 6: The Season of Rebirth and the Wounds Beneath the Stone. The long war between Sơn Tinh and Thuy Tinh had left the land trembling like a wounded beast. Mountains still bore scars where torrents had struck. Valleys were filled with driftwood and shattered stone, and the rivers, once peaceful silver threads across the earth, now wound through the kingdom like restless serpents. Yet, despite the wounds carved across the land, a subtle change began to stir in the heavens. It happened slowly, quietly, as all rebirths do. One morning, as the mists thinned and the first rays of dawn touched the battered ridge of Thuy Tinh, Princess Munang stepped into the open air and breathed deeply. For the first time in many seasons, the breeze was gentle, not carrying the sharp scent of floodwater or the roar of distant storms. The sun rose soft and golden, and the earth seemed to sigh beneath her feet. She closed her eyes and whispered, almost to herself, "Perhaps the heavens grow weary of grief." Sơn Tinh, standing behind her, studied the horizon in silence. The mountain lord had grown harder during the years of unending struggle. The great cloak of cloud he often wore now drifted close to his shoulders, touched by faint streaks of silver, like threads of age, though gods do not age as mortals do. His eyes, carved from the calm of ancient stone, held wisdom and sorrow in equal measure. "Rebirth begins," he murmured, "but hidden wounds remain. This land has endured storms that reached beyond the sky. Even mountains remember pain." Princess Munang turned to face him. "And what of its people? They look to you still. Even after all the destruction, they believe you can restore what has been broken." Sơn Tinh bowed his head. "I will, but this peace, it is not complete. Thuy Tinh's strength has waned, yet not ended. the river still speaks his name. Indeed, deep beneath the shifting rivers, Thủy Tinh brooded in his drowned palace of jade and coral. The Sea Lord had endured countless defeats, but none had extinguished the fury burning inside him. His body had grown thinner, his scales dimmer, but his eyes, wild with humiliation, burned brighter than ever. He dragged his claws along the stone floors of his palace, leaving jagged lines glowing with bitter magic. They rejoice above, he growled to the spirits of the deep. They believe the war is over. They believe the mountain has won, but the waters still follow my command. And water, no matter how often it is beaten back, always returns. The river spirits trembled, for they knew the fury that coiled within him was far from spent. Above, in the world of wind and stone, life slowly began to return. Villagers rebuilt their homes along the lower hillsides. Children ran barefoot along terraces newly carved after the floods. Farmers planted again, though they glanced often toward the distant rivers, cautious and uncertain. Munang traveled among them with Sơn Tinh guardians, offering comfort, healing, and hope. Her presence was like the dawn, soft yet unyielding, a reminder that even after seasons of darkness, the world can shine again. Yet, even in this season of rebirth, shadows lingered. One afternoon, as Sơn Tinh climbed a high ridge to survey the new villages below, he felt the earth shift beneath him. Not violently, not as in battle, but with the subtle tremor of a deep, hidden ache. He placed his palm upon the stone, and visions awakened at his touch. He saw jagged cracks beneath the mountain's rifts, carved not by earthly force, but by the memory of Thủy Tinh ancient rage. He saw rivers shifting in unnatural patterns, gathering strength in places they had no reason to gather. And he saw, faint but unmistakable, the glimmer of a great tide far beneath the earth, coiling like a sleeping serpent, preparing to rise again. "These wounds run deeper than I feared," Sơn Tinh said softly. That night, he summoned the elders of the mountain spirits. They came like drifting moonlit clouds tall, ancient figures with faces carved from quartz and voices like wind over stone. "The land suffers," Sơn Tinh said. "Our task is not only to rebuild, but to heal. The storms of Thủy Tinh have pierced the bones of the world. If left untended, they may awaken again." One of the oldest spirits bowed. We sensed the tremors, the waters shift with unnatural hunger. Another whispered, "The Sea Lord is not defeated, only delayed." Sơn Tinh nodded grimly. "Then we must prepare. The season of rebirth is also a season of truth. We must face the wounds we tried to ignore." Munang stepped forward from the shadows, where she had been listening in silence. "If wounds exist," she said, "then we must heal them together. A kingdom is not saved by strength alone, but by unity." The mountain spirits bowed to her, for though she was mortal, her courage was bright as fire. In the days that followed, Sơn Tinh and Munang traveled across the land into caverns where the earth murmured warnings, along riverbanks where the water whispered of unrest, and through forests whose roots trembled with unseen tides. Everywhere they went, they saw signs, subtle, growing, undeniable. The world was healing, yes, but beneath that healing, something stirred. On the final day of their long journey, they reached a hidden valley where strange purple reeds grew in clusters. The air there felt cold, though the sky was bright. Sơn Tinh touched the earth and felt it pulse. A vision burst before his eyes, a colossal serpent of water rising beneath a blood-red moon, scales shining like liquid emerald, jaws vast enough to swallow a mountain whole. He staggered back. Munang caught his arm. "What did you see?" Sơn Tinh voice was low. "A storm greater than all before. A beast older than Thuy Tin's wrath. A tide that seeks not to punish, but to consume." Munang felt her breath freeze. What does it mean? Sơn Tinh looked toward the horizon, where the rivers shimmered faintly under the evening sun. "It means the season of rebirth is only the beginning," he said. "And beneath the stone, the true wounds have begun to awaken." Chapter 7. The Night of the Shattered Rivers and the Call of the Ancient Depths. Night fell over Viet like a trembling veil, heavy with the promise of catastrophe. For weeks, the skies had been strangely still, too still, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Farmers whispered that the winds refused to move. The elders said the crickets sang in broken rhythms. Even the great rivers of the land flowed hesitantly, their surfaces reflecting not the moonlight, but something darker, deeper, something waiting. It was on such a night that Sơn Tinh, Lord of the Mountains, climbed to the highest terrace of Thuy Tinh. He walked alone beneath the canopy of stars, feeling the pulse of the earth through his bare feet. The land, usually steady beneath him, thrummed with unease. Ever since the great victory of previous years, when he had raised mountains higher than clouds and carved ridges strong enough to withstand Thuy Tin's wrath, there had been peace, short-lived peace, but peace nonetheless. But now, a disturbance far older than rivalry stirred. Sơn Tinh closed his eyes. Deep within the rock, beneath ancient layers of time and memory, he sensed a trembling like the heartbeat of something awakening. A familiar voice spoke behind him. "You feel it too, don't you?" It was Munang, his luminous princess of dawn, her soft footfalls barely disturbing the moss. Her hair shimmered like pale gold beneath the moonlight, and her eyes reflected both worry and an unyielding strength. Sơn Tinh nodded. "The rivers are breaking," he said. "Not from rain, not from flood. Something is pushing against them. From beneath, where the valley lay quiet and unsuspecting, 1,000 torches burned where villages celebrated the harvest moon. Children danced, drums echoed. The world below knew nothing of the storm gathering beyond their sight." "Is it Thuy Tinh?" she asked. "No," Sơn Tinh murmured, voice low with certainty. "This is older than him, older than our feud, older than the war of seasons. Something ancient moves in the deep." Far below, in the riverlands of the north, the first omen appeared. A fisherman named LCC was guiding his small raft when the water suddenly rose, not violently, but as if it were inhaling. He felt his raft lift, then spin, caught in a spiraling current he could not see. He shouted for help, but his voice vanished, swallowed by the unnatural silence. Then the river exploded upward. What rose from the depths was not a creature, not yet, but a voice. A gurgling, rolling, ancient voice, speaking in the tongue of waters before time. The rivers answered like an army waking from slumber. Their surfaces cracked not like ice, but like glass-hand torrents, surged outward in long, jagged lines, as if the rivers themselves were being split open by unseen hands. Fishermen abandoned their nets. Families fled from riverbanks. Water buffalo bellowed and tore against their tethers. The sound of breaking rivers echoed through the night, a deep and dreadful thunder, unlike any the people had heard. From the vantage of Thuy Tinh, Sơn Tinh and Munang saw the flashes, blue light, green light, a shimmering luminescence rising along the river courses. Munang drew a sharp breath. "This is not natural," It is a summons, Sơn Tinh replied, his face carved with grim understanding. Something calls the waters to gather. The air turned cold, not the cold of winter, but the cold of deep, unreachable depths, the cold of things that should have remained buried. And then the voice came. It rolled across the land like a massive wave, shaking trees, rattling rooftops, sending birds screaming into the sky. Sơn Tinh, Mountain Lord, you have disturbed the balance. The voice came from every river at once. Sơn Tinh stood unmoving, though the very mountains quivered beneath the force of the words. Show yourself, he called. The rivers answered. Columns of water tore upward, twisting into towering, serpent-like spires. They writhed in the moonlight before collapsing toward one another. The waters converged, merging into a form both colossal and shapeless, a body made of shifting currents, eyes like twin whirlpools, voice like roaring tides. It was not Thủy Tinh. No, the aura was far too ancient, far too vast, Munang whispered, shaken. What is that? Sơn Tinh voice was steady, but his eyes narrowed. One of the deep ancients, one from the time before men shaped kingdoms, before mountains rose high and rivers carved the world. The great watery entity spoke again. You changed the land. You raised the mountains. You disrupted the flow of the ages. Sơn Tinh clenched his fists. To protect my people, you defied the tide. You defied the sea's rightful claim. Munang stepped forward, her voice ringing like dawn over storm clouds. The people of Vietnamese live through harmony, not conquest. We do not belong to the depths. The massive figure shifted its gaze toward her. Even Sơn Tinh heart tightened. Those swirling eyes held the weight of millennium. The rivers remember her, the ancient being murmured. The princess of dawn, she who carries the breath of morning. Munang's fingers tightened around Sơn Tinh arm. Sơn Tinh stepped protectively before her. What do you want? The answer was a single command. Prepare, the depths have awakened. Thủy Tinh has called to us. Our sleep is broken. Sơn Tinh face hardened like granite. Thủy Tinh summoned the ancients. He sought strength, he sought vengeance. His cries reached the deep. The towering water entity began to dissolve back into the rivers, but not before giving its final warning. The night of shattered rivers has begun. When the moon turns black, the ancient depths will rise. The rivers collapsed, leaving silence so immense that even the wind seemed afraid. Munang whispered, he has allies now, creatures older than the flood itself. Sơn Tinh took her hand. Then we will stand, as we always have. But this time, we must seek strength, not only from mountains, but from the spirits who guard the land between sky and stone. He looked out toward the trembling horizon. The true war has begun. Chapter 8, The Summit of Whispers and the Pact of the 12 Peaks. The winds had grown sharper as Sơn Tinh ascended the jagged ridges of the 12 peaks. Each mountain seemed alive, whispering secrets carried by the currents of air. The echoes of past floods, long-forgotten pacts, and the cries of both man and spirit wove into a haunting symphony across the summits. The peaks themselves had become a council, speaking in hisses and sighs, testing the resolve of those who dared tread upon them. At the summit, the guardians of the peak's ethereal spirits, cloaked in mist, awaited. Their forms shimmered like veined jade, faces obscured, eyes aglow with ancient knowledge. Each guardian represented one of the 12 peaks, their whispers a language older than the rivers below. Sơn Tinh, his cloak torn by the whipping winds, raised his hands. The sunstone he had carried through the earlier trials glimmered faintly, a beacon of his enduring resolve. "I come seeking balance," he declared, his voice steady against the roar of the wind. "The floods threaten not only the lands, but the people I vowed to protect. I ask for the guidance of the peaks and the wisdom of the ancients to restore harmony." A gust swept across the summit, carrying the voices of the guardians, weaving together like a chorus of the elements themselves. Balance cannot be claimed through force alone. A voice intoned, deep and resonant. It is forged in respect, courage, and foresight. The pact you seek requires a covenant of 12, a promise from the heart, mind, and spirit. The covenant of the peaks. SN10 stepped forward, placing one hand on the largest stone at the summit. Symbols of ancient lineage glowed faintly under his touch. He spoke solemnly, reciting oaths passed down through generations of mountain lords: loyalty to the land, protection of the people, and guardianship of the rivers. The first guardian, representing the peak of dawn, nodded, and the stone beneath him shimmered. One by one, each of the 12 guardians stepped forward, their approval signaled by glowing runes etched across the rocks. The pact required more than words, it demanded proof through trials of wisdom, resilience, and unity. "The rivers will test you," murmured the peak of tides. "The storms you have faced were but a warning. The depths you have yet to confront harbor secrets older than the mountains themselves. Only through trust in your allies and the strength of your own spirit will you endure." SN10 bowed, accepting the burden. His gaze turned to his companions, who had climbed alongside him through treacherous slopes and hidden passes. "We face these trials together," he said. "The 12 peaks are not merely guardians, they are allies in our fight to restore harmony, the trials of the winds and the waters." Before the summit would grant its full blessing, the guardians summoned the first trial. The winds coalesced into a swirling vortex, carrying shards of ice and droplets that burned like fire upon the skin. Streams of mist rose from unseen rivers, forming serpentine shapes that slithered and surged through the air. These were the spirits of the floods, manifestations of Three Tins' relentless storms, testing the courage and composure of those who sought the pact. SN10 and his companions advanced, guided by the sunstone's glow. Each step required precise balance and foresight, for a single misstep could plunge them into the chasms below. Lena, his trusted scout, whispered warnings of hidden currents, while Darren defended against the spectral torrents that sought to knock them from the path. Hours passed as the trial pressed on, but the perseverance of SN10 and his allies prevailed. They reached the heart of the summit, where the final guardian waited, a figure of pure light, blending aspects of mountain, river, and sky. Its voice resonated like the confluence of 12 rivers, powerful yet calm. "You have endured, Mountain Lord," it said. "You have shown courage, unity, and wisdom. The pact of the 12 peaks is yours to claim. Yet remember, the covenant is not a shield against fate. It is a guide, a measure of your commitment to the balance between land and water, man and spirit, past and future, the seal of harmony." The final guardian extended a hand, revealing a crystal imbued with the essence of all 12 peaks. "Take this seal," it said. "It carries the power of the mountains, the wisdom of the ancients, and the trust of those who dwell upon these lands. With it, you may calm the raging floods, mend the wounds of the rivers, and stand against the fury of Three Tin." SN10 accepted the crystal, feeling its warmth radiate through him. He understood that this pact was not merely symbolic, It was a bond of responsibility. Each peak had entrusted him with the power to act as a guardian, not only of the mountains, but of the rivers, the forests, and the people who relied upon them. As he descended the summit with the seal in hand, the winds softened, the torrents receded, and a quiet harmony settled across the peaks. The mountains themselves seemed to bow, acknowledging the pact and the mountain lord who had earned their trust. The calm before the next storm back at the valley below. Villagers watched the peaks with awe. Word spread quickly that Sơn Tinh had succeeded in forging the pact of the 12 peaks. The rivers, once wild and unpredictable, began to flow with measured grace, as if they too recognized the new covenant. Yet even as the villagers celebrated, the whispers of the depths grew louder. Far to the east, Thuy Tinh stirred in his watery dominion, sensing the growing strength of his rival. The tides whispered warnings of trials yet to come, of floods that would test both courage and heart, and of battles where the balance of land and water would be at stake. Sơn Tinh gazed at the horizon, feeling the pulse of the mountains and the rivers. The pact of the 12 peaks had been forged, but the epic struggle between mountain and water, between him and Thủy Tinh, was far from over. The legend of their conflict, intertwined with the lives of those who dwelled between river and mountain, would continue to unfold, chapter by chapter, in the annals of Vietnam's epic tales. The summit had spoken, the covenant had been sealed, and the journey of trials, floods, and heroic stands was far from complete. The mountains whispered, the rivers beckoned, and the heart of the land awaited its guardian. Chapter NINE, the river's fury and the mountain's heart. The morning sun rose pale over the valley, casting silvery light on rivers that churned with restless currents. The pact of the 12 peaks had brought temporary calm, yet Thuy Tinh presence lingered like a shadow beneath the waves. Far upriver, the water swelled unnaturally, carrying a low, ominous roar that vibrated through the earth. Villagers watched anxiously from the banks, sensing the wrath that had yet to be unleashed. Sơn Tinh stood at the highest ledge of the central peak, holding the seal of the 12 peaks. Its warmth pulsed like a heartbeat, a subtle reminder of the covenant he had forged. Yet even its light could not soothe the unrest of the rivers below. Thủy Tinh fury approaches, whispered Darren, standing beside him. The floods will test the valleys like never before. Crops, homes, lives all are at risk. Sơn Tinh nodded. The mountains may endure, but the rivers will challenge every ounce of strength, courage, and wisdom we possess. This is a test not just for me, but for every soul who calls this land home. The rising waters, as the hours passed, the rivers began to swell, their currents turning violent. Fish leaped from the surging waters, seeking refuge, while debris from abrivore forests and farmlands tumbled downstream. The valley echoed with a cacophony of rushing water and cracking timber. Lena, perched on a high outcropping, called out, Sơn Tinh. The main channel is blocked by a fallen tree, but the left tributary opens a path. If we guide the waters carefully, we can prevent the village from being swept away. Sơn Tinh moved swiftly, extending the seal of the 12 peaks toward the rivers. A golden light emanated from the crystal, touching the water's surface and illuminating hidden currents. The rivers hesitated, flowing as if guided by an unseen hand. Yet the deeper channels remained treacherous, swirling violently with Thuy Tinh anger. The mountain's heart revealed in the midst of the chaos. A deep tremor shook the valley. The mountains themselves responded, and a fissure opened along the central peak, revealing a hidden cavern glowing with warm amber light. This was the mountain's heart, an ancient reservoir of elemental energy said to contain the mountain's life force. The heart of the mountain, Selim whispered, eyes wide with reverence. It can temper the river's fury, but it must be called upon with precision. Misuse could awaken more destruction than we already face. Tin stepped forward, placing the seal against the cavern's entrance. Energy surged through the stone, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. The mountain responded to his call, and the waters below began to bend slightly, their force tempered by the power of the peaks. Yet even as the rivers calmed in some areas, new torrents emerged elsewhere, a reminder that Thủy Tinh influence was far from vanquished. Confrontation with the flood spirit. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the heart of the swollen river, towering spirit of water, forged from the essence of the floods themselves. Its body shimmered like liquid glass, eyes glowing a deep, stormy blue. This was Thủy Tinh emissary, sent to test Tin's mastery over both the peaks and the rivers. You claim dominion over the land and the water, the flood spirit intoned, voice like crashing waves. Yet the rivers cannot be tamed by force. Only understanding, courage, and harmony may succeed where strength alone fails. Tin raised the seal. I do not seek dominion, he replied, but balance. You threaten the lives of those who dwell here. I call upon the mountain's heart, not to conquer, but to restore peace and temper the water's fury. The spirit surged forward, attempting to overwhelm him with torrents that bent trees and overturned boats. But with the seal's guidance, Tin channeled the mountain's energy into the river, creating a controlled channel that split the waters, shielding the valley below. A test of trust and unity. The flood spirit's attacks were relentless, striking unpredictably and forcing every companion to act in unison. Lena guided boats carrying villagers through safer currents. Darren defended embankments with skill and courage, and Selim chanted to stabilize the elemental energies flowing from the mountain's heart. Each act of teamwork strengthened Tin's connection to the mountain. With every synchronized effort, the seal glowed brighter, and the river responded with obedience born of respect, not fear. The flood spirit, sensing this harmony, slowed its assault, circling the valley and observing. You are worthy, it said at last, voice rumbling like distant thunder. The mountain's heart recognizes your courage, wisdom, and unity. The rivers will flow in balance, but remember, storms will always return. And harmony is a choice, renewed with every tide, calming the valley. With a final pulse of the seal, Tin directed the last of the raging currents into channels pre-carved by the mountain's natural slopes. Villagers cheered as the floodwaters receded, leaving debris but sparing homes and farmlands. The rivers glimmered, calmer than they had been in years, reflecting the mountain's golden light and the soft blue of the sky. Tin stood at the river's edge, looking at the valley he had protected. Balance is never permanent, he said softly. The mountains and rivers are alive. They remember those who respect them and challenge those who do not. Our vigilance must never waver. The flood spirit faded into the depths, leaving only ripples that shimmered in acknowledgement. The mountain's heart sealed itself once more, hidden from sight but ever watchful, ready to aid the mountain lord in times of trial. The path ahead as the sun set over the valley, casting long shadows across the tempered rivers. The people of the land felt a sense of quiet awe. Sơn Tinh mastery over the mountains and rivers had brought safety, but the legend of the ongoing rivalry with Thủy Tinh lingered in whispers among the villages. The epic struggle was far from over. Storms would return, floods would challenge the lands again, and the balance of the mountains and rivers would always be a test of courage, wisdom, and unity. But for now, the valley rested in peace, guarded by the mountain's heart and the vigilance of its chosen protector. The rivers flowed in harmony with the peaks, yet beneath their calm, a whisper of anticipation lingered, the promise of future trials and the enduring saga of Sơn Tinh and Thủy Tinh. Chapter 10: The Awakening of the Thousand-Year Flood. The moon hung low over the valley, casting silver light across rivers that had seemed calm but were now restless. Deep beneath the riverbeds, ancient currents stirred, awakened by the malice and cunning of Thủy Tinh. For 1,000 years, the elemental lord of water had slept, biding his time, and now, sensing the strength of Sơn Tinh and the pact of the 12 peaks, he stirred once more. Sơn Tinh stood atop the central peak, the seal of the 12 peaks glowing faintly in his palm. The river whispers of unrest, he murmured. Thủy Tinh grows restless. His fury will be unlike anything we have faced before. Darren clenched his fists, eyes scanning the horizon. We've faced floods, spirits, and marauders of water, but this feels different. The river itself is alive with anger, coiling, twisting, ready to break free. Lena's gaze followed the distant currents. It's as if the very soul of the water awakens, calling all rivers to converge. The 1,000-year flood is rising, and it will not be held back by simple levees or channels. The rising storm by nightfall. The skies darkened with dense clouds, their undersides glowing an ominous crimson. Rain fell in torrents, unrelenting, turning the rivers into a single, swirling mass. Waves surged over embankments, uprooting trees and tearing through farmlands. The villagers fled to higher ground, guided by scouts and the distant glow of the seal. From the river's depths, a massive surge erupted. A colossal wave, shimmering with a spectral light, rose above the valley like a wall of liquid glass. Within it swirled the form of Thủy Tinh himself, towering and iridescent eyes, burning like molten sapphire. His voice rolled over the land like thunder. Mountain Lord, you claim mastery over land and river alike. Yet the tides are eternal, and their wrath cannot be contained forever. Witness the awakening of the 1,000-year flood. Sơn Tinh gripped the seal tightly. We do not seek dominion over the waters, he shouted. We seek balance, harmony, and protection for those who dwell upon this land. Your fury will not break the heart of the mountains or the courage of the people. The convergence of forces, the flood, surged toward the village, and the mountains themselves seemed to tremble at its power. But the seal of the 12 peaks radiated light, carving protective channels and diverting some of the torrent. Streams of golden energy flowed from the mountains into the river, intertwining with the currents and forming barriers of energy that resisted the water's full force. Sơn Tinh companions rallied. Darren reinforced the makeshift dams. Lena guided the villagers to safe zones, and Salim chanted protective incantations that bolstered the mountain's energy. Every action was synchronized, every effort amplified by unity and courage. Yet Thủy Tinh power was immense. Waves collided with the barriers, shattering timber and sending debris flying. The spectral form of Thủy Tinh struck again and again, testing every ounce of endurance. Even the mountains quaked under the relentless assault, the heart of the mountain and the ancient currents. Realizing that the battle required more than skill and courage, Sơn Tinh turned toward the mountain's heart, calling upon its hidden reservoirs of elemental energy. The cavern beneath the central peak opened once more, glowing with amber light, its energy resonating with the seal. Placing the seal on the rocky floor, Sơn Tinh invoked the full covenant of the 12 peaks. Streams of pure energy shot through the mountains, into the rivers, and met the flood in a dazzling clash of elements. Water and stone collided, fire and light mingled in sprays of energy, and the valley became a storm of power, both terrifying and beautiful. Thuy Tinh roared, his form twisting with rage. The rivers churned, yet the currents, tempered by the mountain's ancient energy, and guided by Sơn Tinh seal, began to bend. The flood, once unstoppable, was gradually restrained, funneled into channels carved by both nature and the will of the mountain lord. The trial of endurance, hours passed as the battle raged. The villagers watched from high cliffs, their hope tethered to the glowing seal and the courage of their mountain lord. Every moment tested endurance, strategy, and unity. Darren, Lena, and Salim worked tirelessly, coordinating defenses and guiding the river's flow. Sơn Tinh faced the spectral form of Thủy Tinh directly, their wills clashing like titanic waves against unyielding cliffs. The seal pulsed, feeding on the mountain's energy, amplifying his determination. "This flood will not claim our homes," he shouted. "The mountains endure, and we will endure with them." At the peak of the storm, the river spirits themselves seemed to recognize the balance the harmony achieved, not through dominance, but through respect and courage. The flood began to calm, Thủy Tinh fury contained yet acknowledged. The aftermath, as dawn broke, the river retreated to its natural channels. The mountains stood resolute, their hearts unbroken, and the valley slowly returned to a fragile calm. Villagers emerged cautiously, witnessing the aftermath. Debris, yes, but also the protection of the mountains and the courage of those who defended them. Sơn Tinh, exhausted yet steadfast, held the seal high. "The river is alive," he said softly, "and so must we be ever vigilant, ever ready to guide, to protect, and to honor the balance." Far upstream, Thủy Tinh form shimmered, watching, silent but aware. Though his fury had been restrained, the rivalry between mountain and water was far from over. The legend of their eternal struggle continued, now strengthened by the lessons of courage, unity, and respect for the forces of nature. The valley, though battered, had survived the 1,000-year flood, a testament to the enduring spirit of the land and its guardian. And as the sun rose, glinting off the tempered waters, the people of the valley knew that the epic saga of Sơn Tinh and Thủy Tinh would continue to unfold, chapter by chapter, for generations to come. Chapter 11: The Serpents Return and the Mountains Reckoning. The valley lay in uneasy calm. The 1,000-year flood had passed, yet the rivers remained restless, their currents whispering in restless tongues. High above, on the jagged cliffs of the 12 peaks, Sơn Tinh felt a tremor beneath his feet, not of the mountains, but of the waters beyond. "Something approaches," Lena said, scanning the horizon. Not rain, not wind, but a shape in the mist, something vast. From the depths of the central river, a shimmering form rose, coiling with immense power. The great serpent, Thủy Tinh, ancient emissary and master of the waterways, had returned. Its scales reflected the pale dawn light, each flicker revealing the fury it carried from the depths. The serpent's eyes burned with intelligence and rage, and its roar shook the valley to its core. Darren tightened his grip on the spear he had wielded through countless trials. We've faced floods, storms, and spirits, but nothing like this. The serpent embodies 3 tins, wrath itself. Tin's gaze hardened. It tests not only our strength, but the wisdom and unity we've forged. The valley, the mountains, the rivers, we must stand as one, or all is lost. The gathering of allies. The villagers, warriors, and elemental guardians responded swiftly. From the cliffs, scouts lit signal fires, calling neighboring tribes and allies of the mountains. The sunstone and the seal of the 12 peaks glowed in unison, casting protective light across the valley. Every current, every stream, every tributary must be coordinated, Selim said, tracing the flow of the river with a staff inscribed with ancient runes. If we align with the serpent's path, we can temper its attack rather than be swept away by it. Tin nodded, his cloak whipping in the rising wind. We do not seek to destroy the serpent, but to guide its fury. Only through understanding the river's spirit can we protect our land. The villagers and warriors positioned themselves along embankments and narrow channels, while elemental guardians of wind and stone summoned the mountain's power. The air crackled with anticipation. The battle to come would not only test strength, but harmony and insight. The serpent's assault. The great serpent surged forward, twisting through the valley with titanic power. Its coils shattered trees, overturned boats, and sent torrents crashing into embankments. Waves radiated outward in concentric fury, seeking to overwhelm every obstacle in their path. Tin raised the seal of the 12 peaks, directing energy from the mountains into the river. Channels carved by previous trials glowed golden, forming a network of conduits that guided the water's rage. Yet the serpent's movements were unpredictable, shifting with intelligence and cunning that defied ordinary tactics. "Steer the water," Lena shouted, signaling the villagers to redirect currents. Darren and the warriors reinforced weakened embankments, while Selim invoked protective incantations. Every moment demanded perfect coordination. One misstep could collapse the entire defense. The mountain's reckoning, sensing the intensity of the threat, Tin called upon the mountain's heart once more. The cavern beneath the central peak opened, radiating amber energy that surged through the seal and into the valley. Golden streams of light intertwined with the river, forming a lattice of controlled power, resisting the serpent's fury. The great serpent, sensing the mountain's intervention, thrashed violently, sending waves higher, attempting to unseat Tin and his allies. Yet the mountain lord remained steadfast, channeling strength from both the mountains and the villagers' courage. "You rely on raw power, serpent," Tin called aloud. "But strength alone cannot rule the waters. Respect, wisdom, and balance govern all who dwell here." The serpent paused mid-strike, its eyes narrowing. It coiled and dove beneath the river, only to rise moments later in a different direction, testing their defenses anew. It was clear this was a trial of strategy, endurance, and unity, not mere brute force. The turning tide. 4 hours, the battle raged. The valley shook, the river roared, and the villagers fought alongside warriors, guided by the mountain lord's unwavering command. Every surge from the serpent was met with coordination, every wave diverted with precision. The seal pulsed in rhythm with the mountain's heart, amplifying their collective strength. Slowly, the serpent's attacks lost momentum. It became evident that the unified force of mountain, river, and people could withstand even Thủy Tinh most formidable emissary. The golden energy of the seal flowed through the serpent's coils, not to harm, but to guide its movements, gradually calming its rage. Sơn Tinh stepped forward, voice steady. The valley is protected, serpent. The floods need not destroy what has been nurtured for generations. Let the rivers flow in harmony as they were meant to. The serpent, sensing the sincerity and resolve of Sơn Tinh, finally paused, circling the valley one last time before retreating into the depths, leaving only ripples that glimmered like molten silver in the morning light. Aftermath and reflection, the villagers emerged from their refuges, exhausted but alive. The rivers had calmed, the mountains stood unshaken, and the valley's harmony was restored for now. Sơn Tinh, still holding the seal, gazed across the water. The serpent has tested us, but the valley endures. Strength alone cannot protect the land. Unity, wisdom, and respect for the river's power are what allow it to survive. Darren placed a hand on his shoulder. Your courage inspired everyone here. The flood, the serpent. They are not merely adversaries, but teachers. We have learned what it means to stand together, to endure and to guide, rather than conquer, Sơn Tinh nodded. The battle is never truly over. The river's fury will return, as it always has. But now, the valley, the mountains, and the people have learned to flow with it, not against it. And that is the heart of our strength. The sun broke fully over the peaks, reflecting off the tempered rivers, casting light upon the valley and its guardian. Though Thủy Tinh remained a looming presence in the world, the Mountain Lord and his people had proven that courage, unity, and wisdom could withstand even the most relentless storms. The saga of Sơn Tinh and Thủy Tinh approached its climax, the penultimate chapter in a legend of mountains, rivers, floods, and the enduring spirit of a land shaped by both man and nature. Chapter 12, The Dawn of Harmony, and the last flood. The first light of dawn spilled across the valley, painting the peaks in shades of amber and rose. The rivers, once tumultuous and restless, now flowed with a measured grace, as if sensing the approaching end of the great saga. Sơn Tinh stood upon the highest ridge, the seal of the 12 peaks glimmering softly in his hand. He gazed down at the valley below, where villagers began the slow work of rebuilding, their faces weary but hopeful. The whispers of the mountains carried a solemn truth. Today, the final trial awaited. Thủy Tinh, Lord of Water, stirred in his distant domain, sensing the culmination of centuries of conflict. The rivers trembled with anticipation for the last flood, a cataclysm designed to test all that Sơn Tinh had built and all that the valley had endured was approaching. The gathering storm, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, swirling into a vortex that blotted out the rising sun. Lightning arced across the sky, illuminating the surging rivers and the distant seas. From the deepest channels of the waterways, a colossal wave began to rise, carrying within it the form of Thủy Tinh himself, vast and resplendent, his eyes like molten sapphire. The river spirits and elemental currents coalesced around him, forming a tempest unlike any before. Darren turned to Sơn Tinh. This is it, the final test. The flood will sweep through everything. Are the people ready? Sơn Tinh gaze was steady. They are ready, not because they fear the water, but because they have learned to respect it. Today, balance must be achieved, not conquered. Lena surveyed the villagers. guiding them to fortified positions along the highest embankments and safe hills. The mountain stands with us. The river can be our ally if we understand it. Follow the guidance of Sơn Tinh, and the flood need not destroy what we cherish. The clash of elements, Thủy Tinh, colossal form, surged forward, the river itself bending to his will. Waves crashed over embankments, uprooting trees, sending debris and surging waters into the valley. Yet this time, Sơn Tinh was prepared. Holding the seal of the 12 peaks aloft, he channeled the mountain's ancient power, sending golden streams of energy into the rivers. The flood roared in defiance, yet the mountains, the people, and the rivers worked in unison. The clash of elements was awe-inspiring. Water collided with stone, lightning danced across river and mountain alike, and the valley became a living tapestry of power and resilience. The villagers, warriors, and elemental guardians all participated, their combined efforts amplifying the mountain lord's strength. Every channel, every embankment, every torrent of water was guided with precision. The heart of the valley, at the center of the valley, the mountain's heart pulsed brighter than ever. Its energy radiated through the seal, creating a harmonious resonance that calmed sections of the raging flood. Rivers split and flowed in measured channels. Waves softened as they met the golden energy. And even Thủy Tinh fury seemed to pause, testing the mountain lord's resolve. Sơn Tinh approached the heart of the valley, raising the seal. Thủy Tinh, he called, voice echoing over the tumultuous waters. We have endured your storms, your fury, and your wrath. Today, we do not fight to destroy, but to harmonize. Let the rivers and mountains coexist. Let the people thrive, and let the floods be tempered by balance, not fear. The flood's resolution, the waters hesitated, a great pause that seemed to hold the valley in suspended breath. Thủy Tinh' colossal form shimmered, eyes piercing yet reflective. Slowly, he withdrew, his immense coils receding into the river's depths. The flood, no longer a torrent of rage, transformed into a controlled flow, nourishing the lands rather than destroying them. The villagers, exhausted but unharmed, watched in awe as the final wave receded. Fish swam back into the calmer currents. Debris settled, and the rivers reflected the soft glow of the morning sun. Nature itself seemed to breathe, acknowledging the end of the trials and the emergence of true harmony. The dawn of harmony, Sơn Tinh lowered the seal, letting its golden light merge with the ambient energy of the mountains. The 12 peaks shimmered in approval, their covenant fulfilled. The rivers, once wild and unpredictable, now flowed in measured grace. The valley, though marked by the scars of flood and storm, stood resilient and whole. Darren approached, bowing slightly. You have done it, Sơn Tinh. The last flood has passed, and the valley endures. Sơn Tinh smiled, weary but resolute. Endures, yes, but it is not the end. The mountains and rivers are alive, and harmony is a choice renewed each day. We are guardians, not conquerors. Lena stepped beside him, eyes reflecting the shimmering waters. And now, the people have learned the same lesson. Courage, unity, and respect for nature will guide them as much as your power does. Legacy of the mountain and the rivers. As the sun climbed higher, its light casting golden reflections on the rivers and peaks, the people of the valley began to rebuild. Homes were repaired, fields replanted, and new embankments reinforced with both human ingenuity and the wisdom of the mountains. The story of Sơn Tinh and Thủy Tinh, of floods and mountains, of courage and unity, became legend, a tale to be told for generations. The rivers flowed in harmony with the mountains, the floodplains teeming with life once more. And though Thuy Tin remained a force to be respected, his wrath tempered by understanding, the valley had discovered a greater truth, that balance is achieved not through dominance, but through courage, unity, and respect for the living world. Sơn Tinh gazed at the horizon, feeling the pulse of the mountains and rivers alike. The epic had reached its conclusion, yet the land itself would continue to tell the tale story of mountains, rivers, floods, and the enduring spirit of the people, preserved through the deeds of a mountain lord who embodied harmony and wisdom. The dawn of harmony had arrived. The last flood had passed, and the valley stood resilient, a testament to the eternal struggle and ultimate reconciliation between Sơn Tinh and Thủy Tinh.